Welcome back to another episode of UAP Studies. My name is Jason, and I'm joined here today with Louis Borges. Louis, how you doing, my man?
I'm doing really good, brother. How are you doing?
I'm doing very good. We got a very good guest on today. We have Randall Nickerson that's joining us today here, who directed, produced, and filmed this fantastic movie, Aerial Phenomenon. It is by a String Theory production. And Louis, what did you think of the movie? I was blown away by it.
I thought it was really well done. I was somewhat familiar with the story,
Yeah.
And I'm sure a lot of our listeners aren't familiar with it. So we'll break it down, explain what happened. But we'll welcome Randall to the show and tell us a little bit about yourself, pre-incident and pre-film, and some of your past work.
Hi guys. Okay. Well, just I grew up with my parents. My dad was a mechanic and my mom was in real estate. And my mom got me a camera when I was 10 or 11, probably 11 years old. And it never left me. So eventually I used it for more than playthings. Used it to actually make a film that hopefully will matter. About this particular subject matter, because there's so many people out there who've had encounters like this that are silent, that are quiet, and have no one to talk to.
So was this your first major project for this, or have you done other things similar in the past?
No, I was doing short films and working on other films for other people, either as a camera operator or sound, or I did literally every single role in the film industry. And then I started doing short films, 16-minute films, basically. And mostly that was in the psychiatric field. To the film I did was right before this one was called Silence in the Herd, which is about listening and how listening is healing, so much more healing than anybody speaking. That people's story, when it's listened to, heals. A lot of us don't listen. We got all kinds of advice, but the thing that actually does the healing is when somebody takes you in, sees you, hears you. So that film did really well inside the psychiatric community. And then this film, I was actually doing another full feature doc on Bud Hopkins and his life as an artist, his life researching UFOs. It's all in the can. But as I was putting it together, the John Mack film, the Ariel school film, surfaced, and I just had to drop everything, because that particular story, I'm going to finish the Bud Hopkins one, trust me. But this particular story it was packed full of so many unique things. The BBC and John Mack from Harvard University. You got a schoolyard of kids in Africa, pilots, air traffic controllers, like.
And for those of our listeners who don't know, just a quick rundown of what happened. So September 16th, 1994 in Ruwa, Zimbabwe, there were 62 students between the ages of 6 and 12. They saw a silver craft, at least what they described as a silver craft. One or more creatures were apparent that had all black clothing. They seemed to telepathically communicate with these students. They all reported like they felt as if they were being communicated with individually, yet this was a mass sighting. So that's unique in itself too. And, it led to a whole lot of speculation and people, just washing it off and saying, you guys are crazy. And then, bigger scientists and bigger names, including John Mack, got involved and figured out that, there was enough consistency with the base story that there's something here. And what they saw is what they saw. And I like the part of the film where he said, if all these kids had the exact same story, I would know there was some kind of collusion or they compared notes, because it's like broken telephone. Even grown adults will vary the story as it passes through people, right? And generational stories show that as well. So there was a big aspect of that where they all had, Some had said they saw more than one craft or more than one creature, but there was still undoubtedly a craft and at least a creature, common, including drawings and everything else. So that's the basis of the story, and maybe you can elaborate on, making of the film and what happened immediately after that sighting.
Well, that was a great synopsis. Good job.
Thank you.
A lot of people don't, know all the ins and outs of it. Yeah, and after that, it was hard for the kids. I don't know if people realized, but the teachers, and they didn't believe the kids, and it was the kids themselves that went home and told their parents, and then the parents called the school, like, what happened to our children? Because they're coming home telling us they saw these things. So that's what the kids themselves are why we're talking about this story.
Right.
The witnesses themselves made this story a story, and that took a lot of courage by them. I tip my hat to them, because that was so brave as little kids,
Yeah.
And yep.
We live in a time that's kind of like a Me Too FO, like the Me Too movement. But
Exactly.
some people are bringing out, and in this film, you captured, very well captured, the emotional impact that this sighting had on these kids. I mean, they grew up to be adults. You can actually see some of the post-traumatic stress that some of these kids who have grown up now are actually experiencing. And that to me has always been especially the abduction phenomenon or close encounters has always been something, personal that I love in ufology. And this story is one of the best ones out there. Producing this movie, though, you did have some setbacks and some, because it's been a work of labor of love, but it took a while for the movie to come out. What were some of the biggest challenges that you had in this, Randy?
Yeah, I mean, immediately the biggest challenge was money.
Right.
I figured, okay, I'll make this film and I've got everything. This was like the first year. And I figured out, I could probably do it for $60,000 or And then I went to the school and realized, oh my gosh, the BBC were here too. And then, all these other things I had no idea about. And then the further it went along, it's like, well, now I to be able to do that, I'm going to have to spend an awful lot more money.
Mm-hmm.
And, I looked it up, like, what would a film cost to make, if you go overseas like this? And, my attorney, which I had to get, which I didn't even want to do, because I'm like, I have to get an attorney too.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah. The further you go along, the more you realize, oh my gosh, I need that. And that's so expensive. But he told me to do this is going to cost you $1 million. That's what he said normally. And I said, I could do it for less than that. You know what? At the end of the day, it costs $1.1 million, which is what I'm in the hole for. But I had no idea. I literally marched in saying, I'm going to get this story done. But the financial part, I had to raise money all the time. I had to literally beg for money, which is not something I've ever done or ever wanted to do. I've never had a debt in my life, and now I'm in debt. But anyway, there were many other struggles. That was just the one that affects you when you're not living the high life.
And a hard one. That's a hard challenge as well. Yeah,
it was. I mean, it was, and to take so long, But in a way, it worked in advantage for the film that it took so long to make, because every single year, probably every 6 months, something new came in. Some new email from some witness, some pictures from some other reporter that was there that I didn't have, some interview that I didn't have. So if I put it out in 2 or 3 years, which was what I would like to have done, I would have never had the full story. And to me, it became important that I want the full story. Like, I don't care how long it takes. It's an important one, and I want to do it once.
Right.
Do it right, do it once.
Well, you sure did it right. That's for sure.
I think so. I'm exhausted.
Yeah. Well, some of the footage even that you've captured, like when you're I didn't put the two and two together, but like you're in Zimbabwe, Africa, and there's all these animals around, giraffes, elephants. Like you captured all these amazing wildlife. This is not, British Columbia, Canada, like where we're from. This is like you go for a walk, you might get eaten by something. So this is, yeah, it's amazing. It's
So true.
the footage that you got, and the fact then the thinking that this is actually what took place at this school in this country. So yeah, kudos, great job on that.
Thanks. I I just have been all over the place. I was staying in for a shack for quite a long time with no electricity, no hot water, nothing. But the reality of, because I have had cats and dogs in my life and I love animals, but the reality is, when first of all, you have to open the door carefully, because there's a snake called the puff adder which likes to lay itself down in front of the door. It's a hemotoxic, so it deteriorates the cells. So you got to make sure that's not there for
Wow,
real, because that's what they
nice.
do. They gain the heat from the bottom of the door. And then you got to walk outside and realize there's a 550-pound cat out there. Oh my God. And there's people that
Yeah.
live like that every day.
Yeah.
Can you imagine? I mean, unbelievable. And I give them, those people such, I mean, we have no idea what that's like. I
Yeah.
do, because I lived it for a while, and all I have is respect for those people. That's living. Gee.
When you hear about the difficulties that everybody seems to have gone through, like including now when you're describing logistical, but like at the time it happened, the BBC reporters and correspondents and everybody who sort of arrived on the scene and got the story, they ran the risk of like career suicide,
Oh yeah,
especially you're trying to get BBC, which is a very conservative, well respected, they have a lot to lose. I think his name was Tim Leach. He was a BBC war
correct.
correspondent in Zimbabwe. And he was like, how do I get them to take me seriously, not sacrifice my career, but felt so important about it. And he just wouldn't stop. And even with John Mack, I mean, here's a respected Harvard psychologist whose own colleagues basically threw him under the bus and said, yeah, we think John's starting to lose it a little bit. And eventually, Harvard went to his defense and said, hey, he has the right to investigate whatever he wants. His brain is still of Harvard caliber, but they strung him out for a little while first. Like they made him sweat and didn't come to his aid right away. And a lot of people, there must be so much impact from this story, and everybody must believe it so emphatically that they're willing to say, screw it, a $50,000 movie to $1 million, let's get her done. There's enough there that it's worth pursuing. And everybody seems to have pursued this. And your movie actually captures that really well. And the struggle that some of these people went through, and, and some of
Yeah,
it might have led to drinking and all the rest. I mean, people had a hard time with the fact that a bloody flying saucer and creatures landed, and you can't just put that out of your head. You can't unlearn that information.
yeah, you're right. You're right. Those people deserve, Tim, John Mack.
Yeah.
I mean, they deserve a lot of credit because they put their reputations on the line big time.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's funny because BBC hired Tim because he was a good war zone reporter. I mean, they sent him into situations where he got shot at, his crew was killed.
Yeah.
Yet when it came to something like this, they abandoned him.
Yeah.
And till his death, he was angry about that. And I understand. And then John Mack, basically, they tried to ruin his reputation, which I think they were effective at the time. But again, when somebody like when people do that, people look back in history and they're like, yeah, nobody would normally do that.
Yeah.
So John Mack may have passed away in 2004, but he lives today. So does Tim, and that's what you do as a man, as a fellow man, when you see other men do this. You bring it up and say, that man put his life on the line, his career on the line, and you stand up for people like that and say he did something right and he deserves the credit, right?
Yeah.
And that's for Tim, John. I mean, I could give you a list of people I've met that I just commend for them doing the right thing.
Well, even seeing John talk with the kids at the time, I think because this took place in September, I think he didn't arrive till Christmas time because I could see some Christmas decorations
December
in the
1,
back.
he arrived December 1.
Yeah, so it's fairly short time for, short notice. But the way that he handled the kids, I was really impressed with that. Like in the recording, the way that he would talk with them, like, well, what did you see? Did he say this? And how did he communicate that with you? Just and seeing the kids' response, like you can tell just by their faces that these kids aren't bullshitting, pardon my English, but they're just not, they're not lying. They're telling the truth. And even now as adults, because you follow Emily around, Emily, I believe Trim is her last name. And you follow her from Canada all the way back to Zimbabwe to go visit. So can you tell us a little bit about that journey and how that played out?
I interviewed Emily in I think it was 2013, and I'd interviewed a lot of the kids, sat with a lot of kids. I sat with a lot more kids than were willing to go on camera.
Okay.
Just FYI.
Okay.
People were worried about their reputations, and Emily was, I guess the best way to say it was she was in the middle of processing it, and she was very open with me when I interviewed her. And immediately after my interview, I'm like, that's the person. That's the person to take back to the school. And a few years went by because of I got one of the best editors on the planet and finally convinced him that this story was legit. And, initially he's like, yeah, I'm not interested in aliens. And I'm like, you need to see the tapes. You need to see the interviews. And once he saw the interviews, wow, he was on board. So,
oh, really?
Yes. And then I actually went to high school with this guy. He was he did Fahrenheit 9/11. He did a lot of Michael Moore's films. He's fantastic. He's a brilliant man. Christopher Seward. He's brilliant.
The editing was well done in the movie. So
he's great.
Yeah,
Him
the
and I
flow
would
was
sit
really
there.
consistent. It was a good production for sure. And I don't give my thumbs up to a lot of films. I find sometimes it's the cut scenes early in the movie don't match. You could tell they were from the end and whatever, but yours flows properly. I bought in, and I don't often do that. So kudos to you and your editor for sure.
Right. Yeah, we all were on the machine. Me, Rick DeGrees, and then Christopher Seward, and someday we'll talk about that because, Christopher would come up. He sorted out. I was my big stumbling block was how do I go back and forward in time, and have it seamless. He figured that out, and he came up with a lot of brilliant ideas that were just beyond the rest of us. I got to give him that credit.
Right.
All I did, to be honest with you, in this film, I did every role. I shot it. I did everything. But the most important thing I did in this film was not quit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everybody else on my team was fantastic.
How long in total do you figure from like concept to final cut? Like how long did it take to put this thing together?
I started in September 2007. And so in September this year, it'll be 15 years.
Wow.
Jeez.
Yeah. I'm never going to do that again.
Well, it took 15 years. The Lord of the Rings took 12 years to make.
Did it?
Yeah, it took 12 years to write the Lord of the Rings, and it took you 15 years to make this amazing documentary. So I think the longer you put your ambitions, your love into it, like you can see that through the film, right?
When you rebuild a car, I did a 4-year automobile project, a sports car. When you put that kind of time, it's going to be really nice.
Yeah.
Same with the piano. When you rebuild a piano, the longer time you put in, it's going to be a work of art.
Right.
And as you said, you kept getting more info that was going to add to the breadth of the film and give you more good stuff. The longer it took, you were rewarded for your patience,
Yeah. And I didn't expect that, but that's what happened.
So did you have people reaching out to you often, or was it you that were trying to reach out to them?
Initially, it was me trying to reach out to them, and then it depended. I think every single person at that school knew my number, my email address since 2008.
Okay.
And some of them, of course, weren't very excited that they didn't want this to be brought out. So, there were certain people who were very vocal and like, yes, please tell this story.
Mhm.
There were others that I really don't want to talk about it, and so over time, more and more people said, you know what, it's going to come out anyway. I might as well speak up. So that happened this year, I've gotten another student I've been looking for. I knew that she knew I was out here, and she got in contact with me as with another male what was that, 8 months ago? And unfortunately the film's wrapped, but
Right.
I really wanted those two in this movie, but that's okay. I'm glad they're willing to talk about it. At least hopefully they can talk about it to their friends and family now,
And one of the main issues too, like you mentioned before, was that they weren't able to tell the teachers, for starters. The teachers didn't believe them. They go home and their own parents don't believe them. So the people of authority, the grown-ups, were just telling them, shush, it's it's just make believe. It's not true. Or Emily's case, strict Christian fundamentalist parents, which that incident did not partake in their worldviews at all. So she grew up harboring these feelings, this post-traumatic stress that she has with dealing with what she witnessed. And as a person growing up after you witness something like that, my hat's off to her, because I don't know how you function after that. Such a sighting, so profound, and a shared sighting with that. So that you weren't crazy, that you didn't imagine this. This was a whole schoolyard of kids.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy.
It is. And some parents, the parents were really important, how they reacted.
Yeah.
Some parents were okay with it. Like even the more the native cultures had I think those kids are okay because of the fact that they were more like, okay, we believe that you probably did see something,
Yeah.
Whereas, the more Western world parents, not all of them, it really depended on how the parents reacted. What the parents' belief system was how they treated their kids.
Right.
And in a lot of cases that wasn't okay, it wasn't good for the child. In other cases it was. So the whole thing is very complex when you really look at every individual person, but well said. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
We were chatting before the show about, the trauma, like, why does it seem everybody that has one of these close encounter, or not everybody, but many people, and then there's that small percentage that are really heavily affected. And Emily in the movie, I think, is one of those people. You got her crying on tape so many times, and that's just what made it on the reels, right? So we were chatting about that, like, wow, it really hits
I
some
didn't try to
people
get
hard.
her.
And then
I gotta say, I didn't try to get her to cry. I was just there to capture it.
Yeah, for sure.
Nothing was staged.
Yeah. And
sorry, I interrupted you.
No, that's okay.
No.
And we were talking about that, like, why is it so profound? And then it just kind of came to me, and it's like, well, if you're fully with it and you have all your faculties, if you literally see a silver flying saucer and entities, how do you deal with that? As crazy as that is, you're not stupid. You're seeing what you're seeing. Like, how do you then deal with that? So, if it were me, and I haven't seen a close-up disc and I haven't seen the inhabitants of the disc, but if I did, I would have a hard time digesting that. Like, not that it would, throw away all the things I learned or thought I knew. I'm okay with that. I'm open-minded enough with that. But if you actually see a functioning craft and little green men, how does your brain just go back to your normal life? Everything's cool. It would be on your mind constantly. I know, at least for me, it would be that way.
Sure. I think the word I always use is, how do you wrap your head around that? It's just so out of what we expect, or what, it's not anything in our science fiction lore, really, not the real thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, it haunts your mind. I've heard several people say that word. It haunts me. Not because it's evil or it's some kind of spiritual thing. It's just your mind is constantly going over it, trying to figure it out, and it's beyond you figuring it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
It
So
is.
it
Yeah.
goes in a loop, you know?
Well, it's an alien experience, not just alien in the
Right.
sense of these entities, but it's an experience that is not common
There's
and
no
probably will
cross
no.
references for it. There are a lot more people,
Yeah.
and there's a lot more people around this world who are, again, afraid to talk.
Yeah.
Keep it quiet. I mean, there are people that have not told anyone,
Mhm.
like literally, except me, because they're like, this guy's making a UFO movie. I can tell him.
Yeah.
And they would tell me the story of what happened to them. And they would say, do not tell anyone what I told you, but thank you for listening to me.
Yeah.
That's profound. And I can't tell you how many times that's happened. I've had that happen from somebody from Japan, China, Europe. I mean, people all over Europe, Africa, South America. I mean, literally the entire globe. So what is going on here?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, what is happening with this? And why aren't we talking about it? Like you said, the Me Too movement. Well, maybe we're the last people to get hurt.
Yeah.
Everybody else has gotten hurt, right? Well, there's a whole group of people we haven't been hurt because everybody thinks we've been crazy. Well, we haven't.
Yeah. But it's time to speak out. And one
It
of the
is.
main, it's, everybody that we talk to on this podcast all have similar things that they're saying is that we need to talk more about it. The abduction phenomenon and the witnessing of entities, that seems to be something that they're not going to address in the media anytime soon. They're just talking about the crafts, getting people used to the idea that we have stuff flying around. But the abduction phenomenon, the interaction between these entities and us is a lot more common, like you mentioned, than is spoken about, right? So that's what this Me Too FO, or if you will, concept is about, is like getting people to stand up and speak out. This movie does that brilliantly. I really think that you did an amazing job.
Thank
One
you.
of the things that I loved about it was the description of the entities themselves, the way that they would float or seem like they would float on the ground, appear, disappear, just like an electron would, appear one spot, reappear in another spot. And they all witnessed this for about 15 minutes. I thought it was a lot
Mhm.
shorter than that.
Me too.
Yeah. So 15
15
minutes
minutes is a long time.
that's a substantial sighting with a
Mhm.
lot of people.
Yeah, I can't account for that entire 15, to be honest with you, as a researcher. So I don't
Yeah.
know what else happened there, to be honest. I don't know. It does raise a question in my mind.
Right.
It's an awfully long time.
Because you even have the two ladies at the end of the movie saying that they blocked a lot of this out, or a lot of this stuff
Right.
has been blocked out.
That's normal.
Yeah. And with time, the kids were saying time felt different within like this whole experience, which again is something that you hear a lot from people that have these interactions with these entities, is that time seems to slow down and things don't make sense. They jump from one place to another. This is one of the well documented cases for sure. And yeah, thank you for making that movie.
Thank you. It's been. I'm glad it's finally out into the world and other people can see it, and I hope the world sees it. Just to give if people look, the military's addressing it, right? We're going to see a big change because the military has come out and they're addressing it.
Yeah.
Our Senate is addressing it. That's never happened before. So there's likely a very good reason for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because this is a big card to drop, and not an easy one because of the fear of public panic from their perspective, and I understand that too. But it's a different day, and I look forward to us having these conversations for real, because we need to have them. And we are a small ball floating out in the middle of a enormous place, which we're still discovering species in our oceans and our woods.
Yeah.
So God only knows what's out there, but we should start paying attention.
Yeah. It's the height of
And then
human
finding out
arrogance to think.
what's their end game, what's their interest in us.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
And wondering if we're at the bottom of the totem pole too, right? Which is most likely the case. If they're able to come here, we're not as advanced as they are by far.
We haven't even got out of our solar system. We're just beginning to get off our planet. Like, it's actually perfect timing for them to show up, because they're like, yeah, we want to make, before those little things with legs and arms or whatever get off their planet, we better see what they're up to, because we're coming out into essentially maybe somebody else's neighborhood.
Yeah. And the funny thing about this phenomenon is that we keep hearing, well, we want the military to address it or to deal with it. The problem is that these entities seem to don't really care so much about the military. They're dealing with people in everyday lives, or appearing to people in everyday lives. Or you hear about these one-off abductions where somebody gets taken while they're driving home. So we want the government to say something, but I think ultimately they can't do anything about it. They're not ever going to be fast enough to catch these things. Like, we know they go from 80,000 feet to 5 feet above the water within fraction of a second. You can't send a jet fast enough to intervene one of these things. Like, there's literally nothing they can do. And I think that's part of the fear, is that saying, like, look, regardless of the technology that we have, drones, nuclear weapons, all that will not do a single thing to be able to catch up to these things. And that's part of the technology as well, which is a huge part of ufology. Is like, what are they? Where are they from? And what do they want? Like, why are they appearing at schools? This school incident obviously is not the first one. There's been multiple other incidences as well, right?
Correct. Yeah.
There was one in the UK very similar as well. School
Wales,
kids
yes.
saw a craft, and
Yeah.
Russia, Florida, South America, Chile. I mean, there's a bunch that I'm aware of.
Right.
And some of them did interviews with the kids, not quite as extensive as Ariel, but there are other cases that exist that there's some other people out there that know some of them. But
Right.
I mean, I explored that, because why are these all primary schools?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that one is
What's the
why they're
deal with
talking to
that?
kids. Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
They don't come to older establishments and reveal things like that. They go to schools.
Right. And in a certain, like, to me, that would have been my elementary school, third, at my school, it was third grade to sixth grade. And that's what primary schools are essentially. This was a little extended. It went from 6 years old to, kindergarten to seventh grade.
Right.
So they had a wider spectrum of ages, but the primary affected ages, in my opinion, were those same third grade to six.
Now, you mentioned in the movie that they didn't interview all the kids at once, right? Like, they thought some of the younger ones initially, their story may not be as credible. So the school focused on the older kids.
It wasn't about the credibility of the stories. It was the fact that they did not want to traumatize the younger kids, because they were concerned about the younger kids. So they didn't have those younger kids draw. They didn't interview those younger kids. So there's a lot more witnesses than we're aware of. The school knows this, because, and I think they made the proper decision at the time, because those younger kids were pretty shaken up, worse than the older kids, and they decided to just remove them from the situation.
Yeah.
And I think that was a wise move. However, those children are still around, and they're in their late 20s, early 30s now, and they're starting to speak up. So I've talked to several of them, and interviewed one that's in the film, but there are others. Others also who have pretty good careers they don't want to have disrupted. But there's I'll put it this way, there's more to this story.
Do you think there'll be a part 2 then?
I don't know. I mean, I'm not really like I want to do something different.
Right, because you've been on it so long. Yeah.
Well, my wish is that I did my work to get the story seen, and I really just want to give it to the witnesses and give it to the people that saw something, and let them speak, and let them come out, and let them in whatever time they need to, but I know they're there.
Yeah.
And I just it's up to them.
Did all the kids experience a telepathic message as far as you're concerned? Or was it just a few of them that received it?
In my opinion, I mean, I can only give you my perspective and the perspective of who I talked to, figuring out where they were on the field.
Hmm.
The ones that had that experience were the closest to the object, the
Okay.
craft, and the creature.
Okay.
I mean, this is an enormous playground. I got to do the air. You can go on Google Earth and look at the size of this element.
Field. Yeah.
Primary school. What a nice primary school. Oh my gosh, I wish I went there. It
Yeah,
just
no, me too. It looks really
multiple
nice.
fields, and my gosh.
Well, it was a very expensive private school, right? It wasn't like somewhere in the projects. This was an accredited and well-respected place.
Well, it became that way. It was started by the farming community in the rural areas, and it was a farmhouse. And 1991, and this came from one of the witnesses, because and checking his story too. But and they made it into a school, and it grew and grew, and they, it wasn't just for well-off kids. It was for missionary kids. It was for the local villages around there.
Right.
So you had that's what's fascinating about this. You had white kids, black kids, brown kids, village, from literally all over the planet, in all these different positions with all kinds of different religious beliefs, from animism to Catholicism to, that's why they were so interested in this particular school, because
open-mindedness, right?
Well, yeah, and variation of every single, I think it's not everybody was represented, but boy, what a swath. I've never seen a school like that, with that kind of mixture of students from all different types of circumstances and religions, everything. It was, yeah.
And it was
that was unusual.
And there was a few sightings in Zimbabwe before this incident
Correct.
took place, right?
Before and after.
Oh, and after as well.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's almost like they were scouting for a location.
I don't know what they were doing, but they got seen by quite a few people. And it wasn't just the kids, that's for sure.
Yeah, the kids got the more up close version. Yeah.
I mean, somebody brought it up. Hey, I don't know how he found that out, because I got all these secrets that nobody knows, because when the skeptics come out, I got a lot of bombs to drop.
Nice.
It just thing fell at my doorstep, and I'm like, well, that's not going to, I don't have room for that in the film. I don't even want to go into that. Let's stick to the kids, but there's all kinds of other stuff that happened that was pretty much on official levels. And yeah, I'm going to save that, but somebody figured it out, something that took me years to figure out. It was an announcer, and I'm like, how did he find that out? But and it involves a radar track from going across the Atlantic Ocean to Africa.
Oh, really?
At the night before.
Oh, geez.
They identified it as something that was not anything they understood. And
just going to put it out there, part 2. Huh? So I'm just going to put it out there, part 2.
Oh God!
wait a few months
before I do part 2.
Just wait a little bit, but part 2 would be great. Yeah, exactly. But it sounds like you got a lot to cover there. Like I said, watching the emotional journey of Emily throughout this movie, of going back there, of getting to meet, and she stayed about the house that she stayed at, which was, I think, Judy Bates's house, the headmistress, was only 50 feet away from the landing site. Was she freaked out by that at all, or was she totally cool with it? Because she stayed at that house. I figured if it was me, I'd be kind of like, eh.
Oh, we were all, yeah. Just thinking back, we were all aware of that.
Yeah.
Everybody on the crew, her, Emily, and yeah, it was just, of all the houses we got, it was the headmistress's house. She was so, she was so inviting and wonderful. She let us stay in her own house.
Yeah, she seemed like a lovely
I'm
lady.
on the couch in the living room. Everybody got beds.
Oh, really?
I got the couch.
Nice.
And I was
him
happy
with all his
that.
Cameras. Yeah.
And sorry to talk about myself.
No, go ahead.
It was funny because I'm sleeping on the couch, and because I'm the guy that had to go and switch the generator on when we lost power, because they lose power all the time over there. You have to have generators because you never know when it's going to happen. This is Africa.
Right.
We don't understand what it's like. They lose power all the time. It's just, what a way to live. So I was on generator duty. That's why I was on the couch.
The guy who spends all the money gets the least appreciation sometimes.
Oh man, yeah, I don't mind. So whatever you got to do, you got to do.
So that must have been a technical nightmare for you to charge your cameras,
Oh yeah,
get your drones going, because you got some great drone shots in there as well.
The drone shots were, I paid a case of beer for the drone shots in Africa.
Nice. That's not a bad price
Good
at
deal.
all.
For real. And he had a real top line drone. The one in Canada is a good friend of mine. And I said, I need to get some drone work. And he was doing a lot of drone work. He also had a really expensive drone. So I owe both of them, they're both in the credits. And, I have my own drone, but yeah, they had top line stuff.
Yeah. No,
but a case of beer to get a drone shot.
That is not bad at all. That is not a bad trade.
That's guerrilla filmmaking, hey?
Yeah. And like I said, you captured these moments, especially with the people that you've interviewed, and there's a lot of them that you've actually tracked down and interviewed. And I love the fact that it doesn't seem like you were intruding on them, so you were just capturing the moment as it was happening. Because some of these documentaries, you can tell it's like they restage things. Let's have you standing here or whatever. For you were just following her around. And like I said, it was a beautiful film. It gave it that an emotional impact as well. So it's not just the visual story of the movie, but also I think you did really well in getting the human side of the story as well.
Yeah, that was important to me. I know this may sound, I don't know how it sounds, but I was doing a lot of wildlife filming, photography, and I wanted to approach this film like I would approach a wildlife film, like let them exist and do their thing.
Yeah.
And just observe and respect and just capture the moments.
Yeah.
And sometimes you're caught off guard, like I'm behind the main character, shooting from behind, not good. But, it's real. It's really what happened. So you got to think about positioning a lot, and like, where do I want to be? And if I move there, am I going to change the dynamics in the room? So I lose the reality.
Oh,
so it's like in wildlife, you just want to be quiet and hidden so you don't affect the scene of whatever a leopard's doing or whatever the creature is. And I approached it the same way. And I kind of want to do that because in my next work, I want to do the same thing, because I'm not interfering with the story. And I don't want to interfere with the story. I want to tell the story, but I don't want to interfere with it. I don't want to cut and say, oh, we got to, change that mic. I mean, sometimes you got to do stuff like that, but thank God we had backups for that stuff. So if we lost something, we didn't have to stop. And that's the last thing I wanted to do, was stop real from happening.
Yeah. Because her journey at the same time, you didn't want to interrupt her coming back home, going through all these things, right? And you could see that in the documentary. It's almost like a fly on the wall type shot. So yeah, well done.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. I appreciate these questions too. Well, I haven't got a lot of chance to talk about the making of, everybody's so focused on the UFO topic. It's like, well, God, we made the story of how this was made. Oh my God.
Yeah.
The stuff I went through, my crew went through, is crazy.
Nobody got sick? Nobody got sick in Africa while you were there? Everybody was good? Because that usually people get ill when you go travel.
No, we almost got, I mean, this is the funny. So we were filming at a location without any permits, unfortunately. And because permits were expensive and whatever. And the special forces showed up from Zimbabwe.
Nice.
So we spent the entire night, right? We had to sleep wherever we were. They put us in these rooms. And there were Emily, Christopher, me, and Nikki. And we barricaded our doors because we were for sure they're going to come in for the cameras and footage.
Right.
Like, and this was only one time. But anyway, there's so many stories. And there's another story where we were pretty sure all four of us were going to be, that was three of us because we didn't take Nikki on that trip. We were for sure we were not going to make it out of there.
Oh, really?
That was in the real deep, but we were heading to Gachi Gachi, which is a camp on Lake Kariba, wildlife. They have the most, anyway. There's no words for that, but they can tell you that story. I still remember it well. I thought I was done, and so did they.
Oh, was it military or just stuck in the bush somewhere?
Oh no, it wasn't. We had our own military stuff. That was the other incident. No, this was with essentially a village.
Okay.
Out in the middle of nowhere, and
the kind that you don't stop at.
We didn't stop. We got trapped.
Not with fancy gear, anyways.
Oh God, I had this is the hard reality of Africa.
Yeah.
But I had $40,000, $50,000 in my trunk, and to a village in Africa, that's everything.
Yeah.
And so
you're outnumbered too, right?
Oh yeah. And it's fine. Most of the people are beautiful and amazing. They give you the shirt off their back. They're really incredible. But there are other elements, and I've run into that, unfortunately, several times. So, but that's what you do. I just say anybody that wants to do that, be careful. Yeah. That's all. Yeah. If you travel over there, be careful. That's all. Find out what your risks are. That's all.
What you're getting into. But like I said, just watching.
I didn't know. I learned by making the mistakes. Not a good idea.
At least you made it out okay. That's the important part. So for the documentary, where can people find this documentary? And the release date is already out. Am I getting this wrong here?
No, we released on Friday, the 20th. Our website got so many hits, we crashed. Nice. And I was using commercial servers, Amazon, whatever, Vimeo. I mean, we were set, but we had issues on the first day, which screwed us up. And, the idea was kind of like, let me release on my own site for sort of a soft release. We've got, you're going to see it on the major platforms very soon. But the site is called aerialphenomenon.com. It's ARIEL phenomenon.com. And you can just Google that and you'll see. It's just crazy what's going on the internet. The film is just taking off, which is great.
The reviews are great. Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't ask for, it's a beautiful thing that's happening. And it's really, I just appreciate that. I don't,
Yeah. Well, you did well. You did good film.
Much.
Yeah. Took you long. Yeah. Took you a long time, but you know what? It's all coming together now. So yeah. You did good, kid. You did good.
Thanks, man.
Where can people find you online, Randall?
Online?
Yeah. You have online presence at all? Are you on Twitter or anything like that?
I kind of went dark about 5 or 6 years ago. I got off Facebook. I am on Facebook, but just recently, but I and Twitter and stuff like that. But I had too much on my plate and I couldn't even deal with social media anymore for a while. I'm readdressing it and jumping in again.
Right.
Not much has changed. I learned really complex programs, so the internet is not a big deal. But the big deal for me is being social. I used to be a social person before I did this film, and I've become kind of a hermit.
Okay.
So yeah, a lot of personal transformation, and I really don't. I'd rather be doing something and creating something than talking about it.
Right.
Because if you're talking about it, it ain't getting done.
Yeah. And you don't want to
unless you're doing your job. Your job is to do that.
Hey, it's to promote it and put the word out there, right? Yeah. Louis, do you have any final questions for our guest?
No, I just want to say thanks very much, Randall Nickerson. You are very humble and very talented man. Sometimes we get certain guests that want to promote themselves and all of their other work and everything else. And that's cool. We do provide a venue for that. but
Sure.
your humbleness was inspiring for sure. I sense there's a lot more that you could have brought up. You could pat yourself on the back a lot more, but we'll do that for you. Job well done. Awesome
Yeah.
movie. And we highly recommend it to all of our listeners. And thanks again for being on UAP Studies
Yeah,
Podcast.
thank you guys. You do a good job.